1:36 here in Lombard, Illinois, in the SportsTownChicago.com studios. I'm Paul Chivari, and if you know what this music means, if you've listened to my show, you know that it's time for Gabe Salgado to come on. He's a freelance writer. You can follow him on Twitter at Gabe Salgado82. We're going to talk a little local college hoops today, and Gabe, welcome back to the show, and let's get to this Illini Badgers game, because I don't think it lived up to the little hype that it had going into it.
Well, you know, the biggest problem that Illinois had last night was they couldn't guard. And an even bigger disappointment was Nana Agwu and John Ecke not really getting anything in the paint. You know, Nana Agwu, he struggled in the paint all season, pretty much his entire career since he's been there. And, you know, basically what it just boiled down to is Illinois wasn't guarding and they weren't making shots.
Yeah, it wasn't even really close. I saw the halftime score 50-25. I mean, I know Wisconsin is a really tough team, and the Illini have a tough time winning at the Kohl Center. But you know, if these shots aren't falling for them, if they're not able to set up their offense, it's going to be a problem. But do you think that we were kind of talking last week a little bit about how kind of Illinois is kind of in the middle of the pack of the Big Ten? Do you think this is going to be something that we're going to see the rest of the season when Illinois plays teams like Michigan State and Ohio State and some of the better teams in the conference?
I would hope not, because Illinois is a lot better than they looked last night. You know, we saw how good they were in non-conference play, so I really hope that's not going to be the case. But you know, it was just a bad night for Illinois, and hopefully they can rebound from it.
All right, so they got Northwestern next. I know you cover a little bit more of Northwestern. Big chance for the Illini to really come back and really make a statement after this. But what can the Illini expect out of the Northwestern Wildcats this Sunday?
Well, they're definitely going to have to pay attention to Drew Crawford and Jershon Cobb, because those are the two best players that Northwestern has. They can score a lot of points. You know, they can get a lot of high percentage shots. So if the Illini can, you know, keep those two under wraps, they can definitely pull it off. But if you compare the two teams, the Illini definitely has the better team on paper.
All right, and I wanted to jump over to Southern Illinois and Loyola last night. I was kind of shocked to hear, I didn't get to see the game, but reading about it, Southern Illinois winning that game up in Chicago, 71-67. Kind of an interesting thing, because it seems like Loyola got off to a stronger start, but kind of looking at these two teams, they have a similar conference record now. Loyola really only has one more win than Southern Illinois after that game. What kind of really played into that win for Southern Illinois? I saw it was close. Southern Illinois kind of stayed consistent. They got a lot of points. They got 31 points out of Desmar Jackson, which is his career high. But what really happened in that game that kind of surprised Loyola there?
Well, first and foremost, a lot of credit needs to be given to Southern Illinois with everything that they've been through this week. They got caught in that snowstorm coming home from Illinois State, and then their train got canceled trying to come back up here to play Loyola, and they found a way to get here. I can only imagine how exhausted they were when they took the court, so a lot of credit must be given to them for them going out there and, you know, playing their butts off. But you know, this game at the same time also highlights the second half weaknesses that have plagued Loyola in their losses this season. You know, Loyola had chances to tie the game late down the stretch. They missed some key shots. They missed some free throws. And again, this just all goes back to how Loyola, for whatever reason, is just not a second half team.
Do you think that the reason why they're not a second-half team, though, is kind of playing into the conference switch this year? I mean, with them being in the Missouri Valley and playing teams that probably recruit a little bit better than the Horizon League, do you think that that's kind of gassing them out a little bit in these games, or do you think that has no factor whatsoever?
I don't think it has a factor, simply for the fact that they were the same way in non-conference play, too. You know, they lost some bad games in non-conference play, too, for the same reason. You know, for whatever reason, they just can't finish. They can't close out games, and you know, at the end of the day, that falls on Porter Moser, and hopefully they can find a way to get it together, because Porter Moser has been there. I believe it's his third season now, and the last thing that he wants to do is be on the hot seat.
I was just going to ask you about Porter Moser, if this puts him on the hot seat, and kind of answered my question. Do you foresee if Loyola ends up with a below 500 record, do you foresee him getting fired at the end of the year?
I'm not sure if he would get fired right away, but they would definitely, you know, probably let him know that he needs to improve or else next season. So hopefully Loyola can be 500 and try to, salvage the season to some degree. But, it's definitely make or break time for this program.
And where does Devin Turk kind of stand in all this? Or is there a way that the Loyola sophomore is going to end up making it into the starting lineup a little bit more? He had a strong performance last night, getting 15 points off the bench. Is this somebody that we're going to hear a little bit more of this season?
Oh, definitely. He actually had a chance to start at the beginning of the year. It didn't quite work out, but he's one of the better players on that team. Devin Turk's a guy that, can get you some big shots when you need it. He's not afraid to try to go in the paint, and, which is especially helps because Loyola is an undersized team compared to most of the teams that they play. But Devin Turk is definitely someone to watch.
All right, and let's jump over here quickly to the Creighton Blue Jays beat DePaul 81-62. I know for a fact that this game was at Rosemont, Illinois, at the Allstate Arena. I did my homework this time, Gabe. No surprise there that it was 81-62, though. I think Creighton is clearly the better team. But you were there. What did you see in that game? What happened to DePaul in that game?
Well, DePaul actually, for about the first 15 minutes, they were leading Creighton, and at one point had a 5-point lead, and for whatever reason, they just fell apart towards the end of the first half, and they never recovered for the rest of the game. They let Doug McDermott get on a roll. They had trouble guarding him, and then the worst part about it was they couldn't stop a three-point shot. So for whatever reason, DePaul just faltered in the last 5 minutes of the first half, and, we just weren't able to get back on track from there. Another thing I noticed was that, for the fans that weren't in attendance, a lot of them are Creighton fans. And, it's never a good thing when you're the home team, but the visiting team is, showing stronger numbers fan-wise than you are. And, this all goes to the fact that, DePaul's going to need that, new arena, so the sooner the better. But, DePaul, they squandered a chance to beat Creighton, and they paid for it.
It's kind of interesting that Creighton travels really well, or maybe there's just that many Creighton graduates in the Chicagoland area, but I didn't realize that. But Creighton's just been such a strong program lately, and it's kind of not a surprise to me to see so many people rallying behind them. Can you foresee a time in the near future that DePaul can gain that much local support, and do you think that new arena that they're building will help kind of boost that support?
I hope so, because the new arena is going to be closer to campus. It'll be easier to get to for the student body, so I really hope that that'll help. But, right now, DePaul is just kind of going through the motions as far as, surviving these last couple seasons in Rosemont. But again, Oliver Purnell could be another coach that's on the hot seat if he doesn't get his team together.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, too, because they kind of brought him in here to kind of invigorate the program, and it just really hasn't worked out at all. But Gabe, I want to thank you for the college basketball talk. Before I let you go, I wanted to get your opinion on Frank Thomas and Greg Maddux getting inducted into the Hall of Fame, and as well maybe your quick, concise thoughts about how you feel about the Hall of Fame voting process in baseball.
Well, it's good to see them get in the Hall of Fame. Greg Maddux is one of the better pitchers. He was definitely one of the top pitchers of my generation growing up in the 90s. Frank Thomas, his body of work speaks for itself. He played clean. A lot of people had questioned whether or not he took anything. Well, the thing is, Frank Thomas, ever since he came up from the minor leagues, he was always, a 6 foot, 270-something pound guy. And, Frank Thomas, he just worked at his craft, and, it was good to see it pay off. And as far as the voting process, I think there needs to be some changes. I noticed that, especially over these last couple of years with players from the steroid era now being eligible for the Hall, I think there needs to be some changes because, there's a lot of bias. There's a lot of singling out. There's just a lot of unfair practices when it comes to voting for the Hall of Fame, and I think that there needs to be some changes made.
Yeah, I really wanted to get your thoughts on it, especially since you're a writer, so I think you kind of understand the writer's aspect of how kind of who's picked to do this and what it takes to be a good sports writer. So that's why I wanted your thoughts on this. Before I let you go, Gabe, you got anything else?
Oh no, that's pretty much it. It's just going to be interesting to see how the local teams here can improve. Hopefully they can. And it'll be interesting to see where the Illini goes from here.
All right, I look forward to the next time. Same time next week?
Hopefully.
All right, we'll be in touch. All right, thank you very much. That's Gabe Salgado. You can follow him on Twitter at Gabe Salgado82, and always gives me great stuff. Just a great guy. Yeah, at Gabe Salgado82. That's GabeSalgado82. Follow him on Twitter. He is a freelance writer. Covers a lot of stuff. College hoops. He covers the Chicago Rush when they existed. I'm not really sure exactly where they're at right now, but always great stuff from Gabe whenever he talks. And I think this time I recorded it, so hopefully I'll get that podcast up for you guys later. But I have some more stuff coming up. You are listening to the Paul Chivari Show here on SportsTownChicago.com.
From a young G's perspective.